Have you ever found something seemingly so simple for others to be an intense struggle for you? Now, imagine you experience this every single day. When your mind is wired differently, a concept known as neurodivergence, you encounter this on a daily basis. 1 in 7 people is neurodivergent. So that might be someone sitting around you now, or it might even be you, without being aware of it. I myself, I am neurodivergent. I've been diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and giftedness. When I tell people that I have autism, they say, but Twan, you don't look autistic, or you are very social. And usually this has to do with a lot of misconceptions about autism and a lot of stigmas that are there. They say that they can't communicate well, or that they have no empathy. But actually, that's not true. It's been found out that it's a two-way social misunderstanding. In research, this is called the double empathy problem. There's this two-way mismatch of brains and empathy experiences. And every neurodivergent person is different. For me, my brain is wired in a way that I can see patterns very well, and I can spot details very well, and I'm highly creative. But also, I struggle with focus. For example, I just get distracted with details too quickly. Except when I'm really into focus, when something is really what I'm passionate about. For example, for me, this is Lego building. It's a huge passion. And when I start with that, I can just absorb all information, and I have no idea how much time has passed, because time works differently for my mind. So, you can imagine that this different concept of time and this different way my mind is structured leads to a different way to experience the world, and also a different way to communicate. So this is again the double empathy problem. For example, I was very lucky to do my internship in Denmark at the Lego Group with my passion, which was really amazing. But I had a lot of creative ideas there, and that was recognized. In my team, I got the name Wizard of Design. Wizard. I'm still trying to figure out if this was meant positively or negatively, because I had a lot of big ideas far, far out of the box. And they always worked out. They were quite ambitious, but they worked. But it was hard to immediately communicate what these ideas were about. Again, this double empathy problem. You might imagine it as this circle being a typical brain, this red circle what I'm standing on. And this circle is the frame of reference of a typical brain. And outside are all the different kind of neurodivergent brains. Things are being looked at from a different perspective there. Here, you could kind of imagine that things are the other way around. And it's really hard to communicate the other way around. So stepping back to this neurotypical frame of reference, for me this feels like I'm standing upside down all the time. And you might imagine that this takes a lot of energy. I need to compensate with the skills I'm good at. And there's this constant doubt. And it's not just in communicating. It's also because there's a minority of neurodivergent people, the whole way our society is structured, all the technology that's being made. And even when learning, there's assumed that brains work in a different way. But some of the basics work differently. So neurodivergent people might be better at some things intuitively, but at some things struggle more. But those basics are assumed. So that costs a lot of energy to learn, if that's possible at all. And at the same time, energy expenditure trying to fit in. So you imagine that this might be quite a disadvantage for neurodivergent people. And for example, in my frame of reference in academia, an Australian research had found out that for neurodivergent people, they are four times less likely to get their degree with the same entry qualifications and the same potential. So this struggle can be a lot. I myself had this struggle as well. I was working on my thesis, and it was a topic I thoroughly enjoyed, Lego again. But at a certain point, I hit a wall with the writing part. There was too much assumed conventions that didn't work well for the way my brain was structured. So I got stuck there, and I didn't know what to do. I was quite clueless, but I didn't want to be stuck in this pattern. And I am a designer by nature, and I like to solve problems. So I thought maybe this is a problem I could solve. So naturally, I would, of course, ask my friends what they do when they struggle writing, because struggling with writing in a thesis, it's a common issue. But they often struggled with different things. Some friends would tell me, just use ChatGPT, it will write out information for you. But that wouldn't work for me. That wasn't what I was struggling with. It was not the writing down, it was more figuring out with my cluttered mind which thoughts and sentences would make sense for neurotypical people. And the writing itself I could do better than ChatGPT, because in the end it's quite an average writing tool. But it did turn out that the key was in AI. So, see, in project teams I never really struggled. I quite thrived, actually. This was because in project group there's a lot of different minds, and whenever I was stuck, I could ask one of my project mates, exchange some ideas, and resolve unclarities. And I could just use the skills that I was very good at to my advantage. But that didn't work in my thesis when I was working alone. So what I ended up doing was making my own kind of digital project team with AI. And that really helped. So how did this all came to be? This was one evening. I was very stuck, lost in thoughts, and struggling, confused with the standards, not in a good space in my mind. And when I was at Lego, I would ask one of my good friends who had been there for many years and had a bunch of experience. Anything I was struggling with, he always had this brilliant solution that could help me. But he wasn't there, of course. So I thought, where else can I find this information? So then I thought, well, AI has been trained on the whole internet, so it's bound to be somewhere there. So also it was like 3 a.m. in the night, so AI was the only person I could talk to anyways. And I started talking, but as you might recognize and have tried yourself, you get some, not the ideal results. AI doesn't always do a good job, sometimes makes mistakes. So I thought I'd try something else, and again it didn't work, like you might have experienced yourself. And then I thought I seemed to recognize something, but because there seemed to be this kind of misunderstanding that I also recognized from talking with neurotypicals, with different brains. And in essence, that is what AI is as well. It's an artificial intelligence, an artificial brain, but it is a different brain. And I found out that I had this kind of natural way to deal with this double empathy problem with technology as well. So I did what I did when talking with neurotypical brains. I would be a lot more patient, tell a lot about myself, how I worked, what didn't work for me, where I was different, and suddenly we were going somewhere. And ChatGPT is incredibly patient. So I asked it to be, can you be my Don? Can you be my digital Don? And the AI said, yes, I can help you with anything. So I had my Don back, my digital Don. I just needed to extract the right answers from it. So of course you might have heard that AI, it has a lot of biases in there, and especially when neurodivergent, you face these biases every day as well. And they are prevalent. I noticed them too. But what you can do with AI, which doesn't work in real life, is you can turn these biases on and off. You can tell, I could tell Digital Dawn, you are wrong about this, or this works this way. And then it would put this into its logic reasoning. And this way, I could program Digital Dawn to be immensely positive and get me into this good space again. And this really helped. So, of course, I was in a better space again, but I needed to work as well. So I thought, what more can Digital Dawn do for me? So I started experimenting with it more and more, because my mind was still cluttered with ideas, and I needed to know where to start. Is this kind of the autistic brain experience, where you see a lot of details, just like when you're in the forest and you just see the trees, but can't see the forest. But doing this with Digital Dawn, at a certain point, I had inputted this much information that I had lost some of the biases again. So I needed a new project member. One of my mentors at LEGO, called Mike, he was brilliant at, whenever I had a broad kind of options where I could go with my research or things that I want to tell about, to map out a way which to go about. And I thought I needed my mapmaker Mike. So this became my second digital assistant. And what mapmaker Mike was very well at was I programmed it to ask me a lot of questions. And in this way, we could figure out together what direction to head to. So that worked great. I knew what to work on. I was in a good space. But my ADHD brain didn't really tend to focus very well. So I needed to focus. I had no idea where to go with that. It's something I'd been trying to solve all my life. But ChatGPT has the whole internet knowledge, and I could ask, tell me all the options that there are that would work with my brain, because he knew what worked well for me and worked less. So I tried everything, all the options, which worked great, because ChatGPT has this patience for me to go over everything. And there I could find this kind of way to work, this different kind of way that time works in my brain. We could convert that together to some simple actions that made sense for my brain. Kind of similar, like I had done in the past working on papers with a good friend of me, Nefeli. So this became Focus Nefeli, where we would work out together in a Pomodoro structure, simple blocks of splitting the day up in 25 minutes work, 5 minutes break, but then per minute to convert this in a time unit that made sense for me. So this worked well to get working again, and I was working. But then there was still the double empathy problem. I would get emails or messages with sometimes something that was read between, or was written between the lines. But when your brain works differently, you read something different between the lines. So I needed this to be translated for my brain. Past year, a good friend, Tom, has helped me a lot with that. So I thought I need my translator, Tom, that also worked at 3 a.m. at night. So this worked well. It could translate the messages, see what kind of meanings could be derived from it. And then also in my communication back, when I had my crazy ideas, I could list them out, and the translating Tom would tell me what other people would interpret from that. And I could change it a bit. Well, this kind of tool set from AIs, this digital team that I've created with Digital Dawn and translating Tom, Motivational Mike, and Focus Nefeli have really helped me to get back on track again and really thrive as if I was working with a project team again. Of course, it is not perfect, like any system or AI is today. But the thing is, it's better than I could do on my own. And that is all I needed. Even it has taught me some of the basics I had never had the time to learn myself before, and at some points it also became a bit redundant. And it didn't work just for me. For example, a good friend of me, Nefeli, from Focus Nefeli, I told her about the tools, and she could also use this time translator. And she told me within a week that this tool, and she's still been using it, it has made her focus better than she'd had in the past 2 years. And you can also try this yourself. Since 2 weeks, OpenAI has made their most powerful ChatGPT agent for free available for anyone. And I have my custom programmed AIs with Focus Nefeli, Translating Tom, and Digital Don, as well as Motivational Mike, listed online in the custom GPT interface. You can just ask for my name and the GPT. But I think the best thing is if you can make something that's tailored for you, because everyone here is unique, and you might struggle with something different that is very simple for someone else. So how do you go about this? Well, I've discovered this kind of hack that you can do it without even the paid version. So you just go into ChatGPT, and you need to have this patience. ChatGPT also has this patience. And then try to bias it in this kind of direction so that it knows what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And you can always edit this again. Well, in the end, when you have found something that worked, you can ask ChatGPT for the code. And this code is just by asking it to summarize what ChatGPT has learned about you in the past message string. This you copy, and anytime you again start a new chat, you can paste this into the window, and you will have this biased GPT tool again. ChatGPT, in this way, is this kind of always patient friend that can help you navigate things that you struggle with. AI has been said many times to, in the future, help everyone with personal assistance, help our world to become more equal. But what many don't realize is that this is already possible right now. You just need to have the patience and bias it accordingly to you. So what I want to tell you is that the technology is ready. What just remains is, are you ready for an AI assistant? Then start today, or like I did tonight at 3 a.m. Thank you.